Welcome to IAwrestle Potentially Dangerous. We are joined today. Usually we're on Tuesdays at noon, but obviously anytime we can get one of the D1 coaches here in the building, we're going to try to make whatever we can to make happen, right? So today we're going to be joined by Kevin Dresser. But before we get to that, this weekend we are down at the Luther Hill Invitational. Lots of women's and men's teams that are going to be there. A lot of Iowa teams, but it sounds like we're going to have a lot of red shirts and whatnot down there at Simpson. Teams are still, kind of getting their teams in there right now. Should see more of the rosters coming out today and tomorrow. And then next weekend we will be at the Grandview Open and the Grandview Youth Viking Scuffle. On Sunday. If you have opportunity to get registered for that youth tournament thing, should be pretty big. Obviously, the Grandview Open is getting bigger and bigger every year. It's going to be becoming like a premier open event at the beginning of the season. And then we obviously have Grandview versus Iowa State in Humboldt on the following weekend. And tickets still are on sale. Got your email, Coach, this week that there are some upper level tickets still available. So I guess you can update us on that. Right. But welcome to the show, Coach.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great timing for us. It's great timing for wrestling. So it's go time. So it's
absolutely.
I'm glad to be here.
You're doing a lot of these now, right? I mean, during the summer, media. They're obviously when you're around it, but people, you have schedules now where you have to talk to the media every week, and obviously the media day at the beginning of these seasons, whatnot. But you have certain obligations, I'm sure, to do that, but. You've always been somebody that hasn't shied away from talking to the media, right?
No, we do. Once we get into the season, we did the media day, and then usually on a Tuesday or Wednesday we have our media obligation, and they come to our room, so it's nice. We'll grab a couple of our athletes and a coach and just talk about maybe the past week and the upcoming week. As far as getting out and about, it's no secret we get out and about with our team a lot. We probably don't talk a lot about X's and O's in wrestling. I get this time of year a ton of emails wanting to know, like, why did this happen at heavyweight and what's up with this guy? So we don't talk about that very much. When we get out and about, it's kind of more fun-natured, and it's interacting with the fans, and it's introducing our athletes. It's really nice that our athletes get to go to so many of our events because that's who the people want to see. They want to see the athletes more than they want to see us. So that's been good. I think our athletes probably attended 5 or 6 functions since the season ended last year where they get out and about and, get around anywhere from a couple hundred people to, Ankeny was 500 people. So different to get out and kind of now it's, obviously now we're honing in on the wrestling part. So people got questions about who's at this weight and how did this wrestle off go and why did this guy not wrestle off? So here we are.
Yeah. So, obviously, this weekend you're traveling down to Florida, and we'll get to that. But tickets still on sale. Is it been sold out? I mean, your email went out early. No, for the Humboldt duel.
Oh, Humboldt. I think we're 150 to 200 away up in the upper, in the balcony. So it's pretty close. I think we'll probably. I don't know if Iowa State's put it out there yet, but there's still a few left.
I got your CRTC email, so I just was curious if it was getting close, right? Last year
Yep.
it sold out, and you talk about getting out with the fans and the wrestlers scene, in these small communities, which are so important to getting people to Hilton. Obviously, you guys have done a great job of doing that, but you just talk a little bit about why Humboldt. Obviously people know your background there, but obviously it worked out great. You're going back again. What's the plan for the future for going back to Humboldt? What can people expect?
We would like to do it every year, and hats off to the Iowa State administration to allow us to do this in Humboldt. I think they saw it was a huge hit last year. So technically, it's not a home match for either team. It's just kind of one of those matches that's out there in La La Land. Hence why ESPN doesn't have a heart attack if somebody else picks it up.
Yep.
Because anything in Hilton, ESPN has first dibs on. But it obviously started out with Tony Ursland and Coach Beeman at Humboldt came to me about it. A year and a half, probably right before COVID. So, it happening last December, it probably was brainstormed 2 years before that. So, obviously, if you went to it last year, watched it, it was a huge success. They were hanging out of the rafters, and you got a chance to see two good Division I teams at that time compete. It was right before Christmas break, so it was great timing. And then this year, to be quite honest, reached out to numerous Division I schools to try to get him interested to come to Humboldt. And it just didn't work out for whatever reason. We couldn't find a pairing. And then Grandview and I, we've been talking and trying to figure out something the last couple of years. We tried to do it during COVID, and it didn't work for their date. So now we got it. Coach Mitchell and I talked after the season last year, and I said, well, here's an opportunity, and he jumped all over it. So here we go.
Yeah, I think that's a great fit for Grandview, and just being in a smaller facility. It just feels so Iowa, like old school.
Yeah,
A lot of these kids, they're that's what they're known. They know high school gyms, and so not. I mean, the Hiltons of the world is for some. That's why you go to that's why you go to college, is wrestling the big arenas. But there's some sense of like getting back into a small place. It kind of makes you feel like not a superstar anymore, I guess. Like just all you gotta worry about is maybe the wrestling. I don't know. If something about it just makes me feel like maybe the kids get to relax a bit more. But you would know more than me, just as far as the vibes go, as far as your team, as far as preparation goes, how they reacted last year in the environment.
Well, it was very intimate. Let's put it that way. I mean, the fans were right on top of you. Humboldt wanted to get as many people in there as they could, so they brought risers right up pretty much to the mat, from the sides, and then of course the bleachers go all the way down to the floor. So it was very intimate. I just know that our guys afterwards stayed around and signed autographs for half an hour. So there was a ton of kids there, at least a half hour to hour afterwards. And I even remember, especially David Carr. He had a pretty big match for us there. He came on. He goes, "Man, we got to do this like every year. Like this was like one of the best environments I've ever wrestled in."
Wow.
So David's wrestled in some big environments.
Yes.
So I thought that was a good stamp of approval that it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, just a different feel,
Right.
So we're excited, obviously, to be a part of it and stream it and support what you guys are doing there, and hopefully it keeps continues to blossom and people want to be a part of it, right?
Grandview will do a great job. I mean, those guys are going to come ready, so it'll be you kind of look at an NAI versus a Division One. All bets might be off when they get there. They're going to be ready to rock and roll, and obviously, whatever they're doing really well, because you don't win that many titles at anything that long unless you've got a good thing going. So, those kids are going to have something to prove when they step into Humboldt, and our guys, if we're going to, if we strive to be a top 5 team, we have to learn how to compete, being hunted every weekend, and that's a different feel. And David Carr's used to it, and Coleman and Younger are going to have to get used to it this year. But the whole team needs to feel, if you're going to be a top 5 program, you got to be able to come ready and know that everybody's going to take your head off every weekend, and Grandview's going to come ready to take their head off.
So you guys are flying out today.
Yep.
For Jacksonville, and this event first time coming.
Yes, first time they've ever had anything in Division I in Jacksonville, Florida. That's what they're hyping it so much for. So I know Coach Bono is a Jacksonville native, and so he's the He's completely behind that. I think he copied me because I went to Humble, right?
Yeah.
And he said, well, we'll just go to Florida, my hometown. But good for him. He's got a lot of excitement built up. I'm sure they're going to have a big crowd. Florida high school wrestling is getting a lot better. It's pretty salty right now. And so I'm guessing he'll have a lot of Florida high school wrestlers there. I'm guessing a big crowd. I think it's on Rockfin.
Yep.
I
As
think
well.
it'll be the told my guys it'll be the main event Saturday night in Division One wrestling. So we're going to
Absolutely.
go early.
Yeah, right away. I mean, you guys are right away, and what it when you're mapping out your schedule, and at the end of the day, you're prepping for March, right? But like, what opportunity to wrestle a Big Ten school, and maybe the highlight night of the duel of the weekend, I guess. But as far as your kids, your guys go, your athletes go, and seeing what they, how the summer goes, this is an early test, right? Was that important to get something on this date, or is it just the right opportunity?
I think both. I think it was a good opportunity. It's early, so it's going to be a long season, but we've got a couple breaks in there. We have a weekend off in January. We have a weekend off in the first weekend of December. I think we're off, and we might even have a weekend off in November. So there's a lot of thought put into, at least on my end, to making sure that we're freshest at the end of the year, and so that's always a challenge, and it's different with each guys in your team when you got a couple freshmen that are really young guys in your lineup. They're used to their high school season going from December to February, and now you're going from November to March. So that's one thing you got to keep in mind, and that's why it's nice to get some depth and hopefully maybe give those guys a break. But everybody's different. Some guys can grind all year, some guys can't grind all year. So, just turned out to be that what we owed in obligations and in terms of home and aways, we got some good. I mean, the conferences. You can't run from Oklahoma State and Missouri and Oklahoma and UNI because they're in your conference. And we wanted to get some Big Ten opponents. We tried to get some Big Ten opponents to come to Hilton, and Illinois was the only one that we could really get to bite on it. So it's going to be a really challenging, tough schedule. But I think that's what you sign up for if you come to a big time program.
Yeah, and having the opportunity, I guess, to go to Florida too is always nice for some of these Iowa kids and get some of. I mean, some of these kids maybe have never flown, right? I mean, just Iowa kids just are for farm boys, right? And being on a plane is different. I just remember that in college. We went to Florida, actually, Fort Lauderdale. It was my first flight ever. Was a wrestling trip. Yeah. So, I'm curious, just kind of like what your schedule is like down there. Is there some time just to kind of relax and have some team bonding? Is it all business? How do you guys handle something like this first of the season?
Well, it's pretty much all business. It's nice to do business in 80 degrees versus 10 degrees, but tomorrow will be a light day. We don't get in until close to midnight tonight, and we got to work out at 2:30, which will probably be about only an hour workout. So they're going to have most of the day to kind of kick around and recover. Most of them will get a workout in before they go to bed Friday night, get up and wrestle Saturday, and then I think we're on the road. I think we fly out Sunday morning, by 9:00. So, it's not a go to the beach kind of trip. It's a business trip, and with school being sensitive, we can't just take off and leave on a Wednesday.
Yeah,
we are in class, so it's nice to go down there and help wrestling in another part of the country. I think anything you can do to grow wrestling and get good competition is great. I mean, Campbell's doing a great job. We get them second, and Little Rock, Arkansas, they started out the other night. I saw they beat somebody 41-3. So they're up and coming. So it's just a really good test for us early. Seeing what these guys are like off the scale. I mean, you can wrestle all daggone summer and you can wrestle all fall, but until you get on the scale, on weight, get off the scale, hydrate, put some food in you, and then step out there, that's real. The rest of it, I mean, you can kick a lot of butt in July and August, but until you're on that weight, on the nose, and you're off that scale, getting that singlet on, July, August doesn't really matter. So this is what, and you'll have some guys you'll see this weekend on both sides. You're going to see some guys, feel really good and feel like they've kind of figured out this weight cut, early in the year. And then you're going to have some guys that are going to not feel so good. They're going to have to suck it up, and it might be ugly, and that's why we do it. That's why we do it, so we get used to it, and that's a big part of success that I think the average fan misses. If you don't feel good out there, it's just too competitive at Division I wrestling. That somebody's going to get you that maybe has no business getting you just because you didn't feel good.
It's a different world,
Oh,
especially for these first duels and kids maybe getting their first shot at the varsity matchup. I mean, obviously opens and stuff give you that vibe, but I mean, in a dual format, I'm a big fan of the dual formats, and then having multiple duels from a coaching perspective as a fan. I just like those formats because you get to see one as a fan is just that interaction that your teammates can have with one another and cheering them on, right? You don't really get that at tournaments, I feel like, as far as a fan goes and what you see, because you guys at a tournament, you're somewhere else. You don't want to mess with anybody, right? At a duel, everyone's there, and I just like that atmosphere a lot more as far as a fan goes. As an athlete, as a coach, you know, what are your thoughts on tournaments versus duels as far as a team goes? Is tournament all about just getting that multiple match in to just feel like the NCAA tournament, even if it's a 1-day tournament, versus duels, I guess?
well, I love duels. I think for the excitement of the sport and the fan can come understand a dual meet. If you're a brand new fan, you can understand the dual meet. Somebody can sit down and explain the points to you that, hey, if you beat this guy, you get 3 points for your team. If you lose, you get 0. If you beat him kind of bad or beat him worse, you might get 4 or 5, and if you pin him, you get 6. That's a little easier concept to figure out, and then the back and forth, they can see it in the scoreboard. Tournaments are truly for your diehard wrestling fans. I've been doing this a long time, and I always say I don't know. People ask me how many points you get for winning this round, and I'm like, my formula's always been let's just keep winning, and then we'll look at the score. But
Yeah.
tournaments is a lot harder to understand. So duels are easier for the fan. I think that we had it past maybe 10 years ago that duels were really going to have a powerful impact all the way through the NCAA tournament, and it got shot down by a couple big dogs at some big schools. But it would have really been good for wrestling. I think we've seen some great dual meets over the years that fans can understand. And if you start putting on ESPN every Tuesday night or Wednesday night or Thursday night, 2 or 3 dual meets, it would blow up.
Yeah. Maybe
Blow up.
maybe a little gambling too. There was some gambling odds last year here for some duels in Iowa.
Right.
From gosh, who was it? Circus Sports had some sports bets, and maybe it was a duel that I wasn't able to go to, and I was at maybe at a bar or whatnot, and people that were just maybe gamble on football, basketball, or whatnot. They're like, "Oh, we can gamble on wrestling." Like, okay,
Yeah.
what's the line? Like, tell us what you think we should do, and they're in, right? And now they're invested in that duel,
Right.
like which they would never even care about
No.
the duel, right? I mean, so as much as people hate to say, gambling on college athletics, kind of hurts it. I think it helps viewership. It helps engagement. So, and the more gambling we can have on sports and duels, the better, I think. But that's a whole nother.
No,
It's a whole nother
I
conversation, I
don't
guess.
disagree with you. I think anything you can do to, we've seen how much wrestling's grown in the last 20 years. I mean, it continues to grow. There's more mediums that want to distribute it. It's just, it's people are dying for wrestling right now, especially now that we're in November. So,
Yeah.
I know the Saturday event will be really well watched, and I'm sure Rockford will make a little money off of it.
Yeah.
Good for them. And there's going to be, for the wrestling fans out there, there's a lot of good product coming forward.
So the duels this weekend. What can fans expect? Is this a feeling out some guys? Is it, hey, we're gonna put our full, who we think was going to be there in March on the mat, giving guys opportunities. What can fans expect, I guess?
Well, we're going to, and I think probably everybody is in this first format. I've seen a few of the entries, and, until we actually weigh in Saturday morning and see the weigh-in sheets, we won't know exactly who's eligible for his first dual meet. But right now, our intentions are to weigh in 16 guys. So that means you got, 4 guys that are going to be slated to wrestle all 3 dual meets. And then the other guys have we have the ability to rotate a little bit. So I'm going to look at to see how guys feel, the day before, see how guys feel off the scale, see how guys feel in the warm-up. Obviously, the number 1 guy currently at each weight will probably get the nod, but there might be some strategy. We might rest some guys. We're going to see how guys feel. So for me, it's truly going to be a game time decision that I kind of have an idea in my mind who we're going to wrestle those first two dual meets. But that doesn't mean that, I'm going to watch workout tomorrow and see who has a lot of pop and who has a lot of energy. And if somebody doesn't, then, we'll see how they do off the scale. And
maybe able to get some gamemanship in these duels. I love that stuff, man.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, dang, I like to win.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to win 3 times.
Yep, absolutely.
Try to win really hard the third time.
Absolutely.
Really hard. Really hard.
So, when we're talking about, sending 26 guys? 16 guys. And I asked you guys, all the D1 coaches at media days about the new rule of being able to have some of these true freshmen hit the lineup. So if anyone, didn't see media day or doesn't understand that rule yet, could you explain just a little bit to the fans, like why they might see a true freshman and then everyone not freak out like, oh my gosh, we burnt that kid's red shirt, what that official rule is, how it's being interpreted? Because I feel like there's always interpretations that go different ways when the NCAA comes out with different stuff. But it's a big deal in my, from a fan standpoint, from a coach's standpoint, really, and the athlete's standpoint, to you guys to allow to be able to let these guys wrestle.
Yes. So the rule, the opportunity, and of course, like everything, it follows football. And I don't know what the number is in football, but the number they determined in wrestling is 5 dates. So we can use a freshman 5 times this year without jeopardizing their red shirt. So they can have 5 weigh-ins, but they've got to compete. So they've actually got to compete 5 times. So if we weigh in a freshman this weekend, he doesn't compete, that doesn't count as one of his 5. So, for instance, we're taking 5 freshmen with us, true freshmen. So if we wrestled all of them, even if it's 1 match, 3 matches, whatever, you burn one of their 5 and you got 4 more to use. So it allows some strategy and it'll make some more interesting dual meets. I think the NCAA did it probably also just because, they didn't want, they don't want a lot of guys. The one bad thing about open tournaments, especially when you have true freshmen, is, and I'll explain the first semester rule too here, but they don't want freshmen traveling late at night, because they're unattached and they're coming back from a tournament in a snowstorm, 5 hours, and they're not with the team. This allows us, like, we're going to take 6 guys. We're going to take 6 freshmen to Grandview, and they'll all be attached. And we can coach them. We can transport them. We're going to do the same thing at South Dakota State. We're going to take 6 freshmen. We'll determine probably our 6 best freshmen. We'll take them to South Dakota State. We can pay for their rooms. We can transport them. We can coach them. Where in years past we couldn't do that. So that's kind of the freshman rule. The other thing that's changed this year is freshmen are not allowed to compete the first semester unless you use one of those 5. So we can't just send a bunch of guys unattached to tournaments the first semester. And they're doing that probably mostly for academic reasons. They don't want these guys traveling late at night, number one, for the safety, but they also don't, they don't want them crashing down to weight and their grades suffer their very first semester of college. So probably 2 really good rules. So it's just going to cause you to, and we just happen to have a really big freshman class this year. So, we can send some freshmen to a couple different tournaments. As long as we don't get over 6 guys entered per tournament, it doesn't count as a date against us either. So I'm kind of getting into the weeds, the technicalities. But there's a method to our madness when people see that, like, we're going to send 6 freshmen to Grandview, and then we're going to send 6 freshmen to Luther. Luther's got an open that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll send our top-tiered freshmen to Grandview, kind of our 6 best freshmen, and then the next 6 best we'll determine we'll go to Luther. So,
is this rule something that within the D1 coaches has been a discussion of, like, how do we get this changed, or is this
kind of came up in the last year or two, which it's kind of unusual, but that's how the NCAA works. I mean, you'll try to get something changed. Like, we've tried to make wrestling a second semester sport for 15 years, and they keep figuring out a reason not to make it happen. And all of a sudden, this rule comes up a year and a half ago, and boom, it's done. So, NCAA to me doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So on one hand, you like it, and on one hand, you don't.
I like it. I think it's just going to add more wrestling. I think it just allows you to put in those guys and kind of make them feel part of it and get their feet wet a little bit, and it'll cause a lot more gamesmanship and strategy within these dual meets to see which guys you're going to pull. And you go to a big time dual meet, you're going to bring your ace freshman that you're going to redshirt, but you want to go throw him out there in front of a big crowd and see how he does.
And that's what, in the past you have some of these really strong recruiting classes, and we might there's a bunch of hype of them committing, and then you don't really hear from a year and a half, and you kind of forget about them. Yeah. Like you kind of forget about, like, holy cow, they have that guy. Like, so you kind of lose a little bit of that hype for recruiting wise too. So that's why I like it. Just be like, holy crap, they have that freshman, and they're throwing him in. They think he's good, and whether he's going to be the guy in March or not, you still get to see him. So I just really like that flexibility from a coach's perspective to be able to do that, and for the for the athlete to always be ready to know that they could get thrown in any given time at the varsity level, and they don't have to feel like their whole season potentially could be wasted. Like that, just I've hated seeing that, where coach maybe felt like they were right and they weren't ready, and it just then they didn't get to wrestle at the March tournament, so that whole year kind of that sucks. So I like the new rule. Anything else that fans, I guess, as far as rules change go, that maybe fans that are watching now just don't know about? Maybe people they're not following college wrestling a whole lot. Anything major?
No, I mean, this year was a year where there was no rule changes. Usually we get a rule change every other year, so this was a non-rule change year in terms of just the NCAA rules for a match. So no, there's nothing that's new that's coming down the pike this year.
Okay, all right. So just looking at the overall, the team and the season, some duels obviously they're going to be highlighted. I've watched some interviews with you. I've interviewed you too. Everyone last year was talking about the Iowa State duel, what happened at the end, which kind of sucks that is what's talked about, because the duel was just great. Yeah. But I've heard you say a couple of times, hey, I'll be politically correct. We're not going to talk about specifics about why we're excited to go to Iowa City, but the rivalry is what growing up in Iowa was all about, right? Like getting to Hilton early in that huge line out the tunnel. And I gotta imagine, like, when you came to Iowa State, it wasn't really there, right? So getting over that hump is really important, obviously, to you guys. But like, do you feel like has always been there since you got there, or has it been just gradually like, hey, we're here?
Well, I think the rivalry has always been there, but it's been kind of non-existent in terms of energy for a while. I think that's back. Last year was probably pretty good proof that there was a lot of energy in there. I know that Big Ten Network decided to make that their first dual meet of the year, the Iowa State meet, and obviously we're not a Big Ten team, so I think just that in itself shows that they know they're about ratings, and they're going to make some money off that dual meet. So, and I think the people in the state of Iowa deserve rivalries like that. And that was, when I got hired, and I think my very first press conference, I laid out some goals, and one of them was to beat Iowa. And we coach our athletes all the time to have goals. As coaches, you have to have goals, and you have to have goals for your program, right? And the reason that that's an important goal is because it is an in-state rivalry, but look at how much better Iowa's gotten in the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, Iowa was in terms of Iowa in 15 and 16. I beat them when I was at Virginia Tech in 16. We beat them at the Nationals that year. So they've stepped it up too. Good for them. They look what they've done at 17, 18, 19. They won a national title somewhere in there. So it's a great benchmark for us to go, okay, we're going to go beat our in-state rivals, and they're ranked second or first in the nation. I think we wrestled last year. They were ranked first, and now they're ranked second. So that's a benchmark for us to show us how we've arrived as a team. Is if we're knocking off number ones and number twos and number threes, that's what we need for our guys to have the confidence to go to the NCAA tournament and to win at the tournament level. You gain the most confidence in this sport by going out and winning big matches, as an individual. And so when you do that a bunch of times, the team takes care of itself. So it's probably a long-winded answer, and yeah, we're super excited to go to Iowa City and wrestle, and whether it's in Iowa City or Ames. But I'm sure they don't want to recognize it as a rivalry because you don't want your in-state rival gaining momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, you don't want that, do you?
No.
But last year was pretty. For some reason, they got awful fired up over on that other side. So for it not being a rivalry, there seemed to be a lot of emotion. It seemed to me. So we got it right where we want it right now. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and just the atmosphere at Hilton is something that just wasn't there when you arrived, and it's just continuing to every year. I just feel like I talked to you about that aspect of what you guys have had to do at Iowa State. Not only, they would say, "Oh, the product is great," people are going to show up,
right.
But it's not just that easy. I think, right? So,
winning helps a heck of a lot. Putting butts in the stands, there's no question. Is winning helps, and you got to have entertaining winning guys, and I think we've got that. I know we've got some super entertaining guys right now, and we open up November 12th with Cal Baptist, who's a new affiliate of the Big 12. So, and they had signed a couple of really good kids. So there's going to be, even that particular dual meet on November 12th at Hilton, there's going to be a couple of really good matches, and that's what wrestling fans in Iowa like to see. So we're going to do it up big. We're going to have a tailgate that starts at 6 o'clock right at Sheeman, which is really hooks up to Hilton, so it's adjacent. So, people can really make a night of it. They can come to Ames at 6 o'clock tailgate. We'll have a coach or two go in and talk. Maybe a couple alumni get up and talk, and then they can roll into Hilton and watch the match. And just a great way to kick off the season. But like you said, you got to have a product, and people start showing up. And I've thought, I've just felt the Hilton energy increase every year. We've had some pretty exciting dual meets. We had a dual meet with you and I the year before that the roof came off on, and we've had some exciting dual meets in there recently.
And just the sheer attendance has just gone up, right? Getting that back up into the top 10. Obviously great for Jamie Pollard and obviously your guys' staff, because in the day butts are on the seats.
Right.
You guys don't get paid. So,
right.
What do ticket sales look like right now compared to last year?
I know we've sold, we're in the 2000s for season ticket sales, which I guess I think they've only been selling them or keeping track of selling season tickets for 20-some years. So I guess that's the best Iowa State's ever done, since pre-Kale, that they're keeping up with that. So yeah, it seems like it is. We've got a great home schedule in January with Arizona State, Oklahoma State, and Wyoming all coming to Hilton in January. So, I'm thinking we'll sell some tickets for that. But I think as we do, we got to do well. And that's, I guess every coach would say that. But I think as we do better, this weekend's a big weekend. We're going to be, a lot of wrestling fans are going to watch us. And, they get excited about the new guys in your lineup, or the guys that come in that make the big splash. Look at Younger Bastida, just how much exciting he's brought to our program in just 1 year of being in there. And, I know people come to me right now and say, I'm bought season tickets just because I want to see Younger Bastida. And I'm sure there's people out there that have bought season tickets just to see David Carr. And there's people out there that, hopefully will continue to buy tickets to see Panero Johnsons, Casey Swiderskis of the world. So, you start getting a bunch of marquee guys in there. Everybody's got their favorite. And that's what we have to continue to create.
Bastida, 3 years left?
He's got 3 years left, yes. 4. Okay. He's actually got 4, but 3 can wrestle, so he's got a red shirt in there.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, that is a guy that I get a lot of questions about.
Right.
Like, how the heck did they, go from not wrestling folk style to what it is now? That's just a super interesting story that you guys have been able to get him to where he's at right now.
Right.
And he doesn't know any different, right? So people ask him these questions, and he's like, I don't, that's how I roll. I guess this is what's up. And super confident. He was expecting to do well at the NCAA tournament. And I remember him just being asked about, those losses, and, he wasn't expecting them. So, as overall this team, there's lots of talk about the freshmen, right? But and everyone knows David Carr is uh, has had this success, and a face of the team. But Bastida, you mentioned him, and some of these other guys. Is it kind of becoming now where I want to say that the David Carr show, but do you feel like guys are like trying to they're wanting to make a name for themselves? Do you feel that like in the room, outside of the room, where guys are want their face out there too?
I think there's a lot of respect from our team, across our team with David. They see the work he puts in. It's not just David Carr's talented. He's gotten everything he's earned. He's worked for it. But I think the good thing that I've seen, and I've seen for a little bit now, is we've got a bunch of other guys that that know they can do the same thing, and that's a pretty high bar. I mean, Marcus Coleman, even this summer that Sam Schuyler had, is just the confidence that we've got in some individuals, and you can't go out there and shake hands if you don't have confidence. You can't fake that. And even Younger last year, I think I'm really excited to see Younger wrestle this year because there was a lot of head scratching with Younger just in the fact like, okay, do I really want to go down? Because that's a big decision,
Mm-hmm.
and that when that weighs on your mind, I think you're going to see him be more comfortable and take a little bit of that worry off, just by going, hey, I'm going to go down. Let's get this over with.
Mm-hmm.
I got that kind of confidence. So I think we've got guys that are really confident right now, and obviously, like we've talked about, we got a schedule to challenge them right away. So I mean, if you look at just those bouts on paper for Saturday night, I mean, you got a lot of ranked guys hitting, up and down from 125 to heavyweight. So some of those confident characters that I'm talking about got a chance to jump up right now.
So when it comes to getting that confidence, has there been any kind of a change in just everyday life as far as, say, from March, right? And you guys didn't get what you wanted. A lot of guys didn't get what they wanted in March, and as a coach, you look at, man, did I do the wrong things as far as scheduling goes, as far as practices go? Is that something that you guys have been able to just kind of change into them, or you see them as individuals wanting to change? I guess they're just their habits or whatever it may be.
Well, yeah, it has to really start in practice. I mean, you see a guy like Marcus Coleman who kind of went to the NCAA tournament 2 or 3 times and then didn't get what he wanted. Then all of a sudden last year he breaks through and gets on the podium as an All-American. But you got to see it in the practice room first. And so the practice room has just gotten crazy competitive, ultra competitive right now. And it's fun to watch the practice room. I mean, you ask any coach that's on our staff and just ask them what they see in practice. That's why I'm most optimistic, because I just have very rarely I've ever seen a kid that just doesn't do a darn thing in practice, isn't very good at practice, and then goes and lights it up, right? There's not very many of those guys. The one guy that comes to my mind, I love him to death, right, is the odd, unusual Gannon Gremmel, right? I've never seen a guy. He's probably one of the only guys that I saw in practice. I'm like, dude, you got no chance. Like, you suck, right? But then you put him in Hilton Coliseum. It's like, holy smokes! Like, he used to come into Hilton Coliseum and like literally tear his shirt off and beat his chest like a a crazy man. Like, everything hurt that he did to you. If he shook your hand, it hurt. Like, he was a gamer, but in practice, he just And I still think if he would have been able to embrace practice more, I'm a coach, that I think we could have got, even more times in the podium and stuff like that. But there's not many guys like that. I've only been around in my college coaching, maybe I can think of 2 guys, all right? And I've had a lot of college athletes. So when you start seeing it in practice, that's exciting because now we got a bunch of guys on this starting 10 that, if I picked up the newspaper March 21st and these 4 guys got it done, it would surprise me a bit. Or maybe these 4 guys. It'd be nice if it was 8 guys, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of guys that just ready to break through, and have that Marcus Coleman year like he did last year.
Is anything change from you guys as a coaching standpoint, go from maybe leading up to the NCAA championships, the Big 12 championships? Because you had a great Big 12, right?
Yeah,
you had 3 in the.
Yeah, we've had, we've always been stuck at second and third in the Big 12s, and we just haven't been able to break through and win the tournament. Obviously, we want to do that this year. But, yeah, we didn't have a bad Big 12. And, you know, if you look at it, we had 3 guys that did a lot of work for us at the NCAAs last year, the guys that were the All-Americans, obviously. But all of the rest of the guys, we scored 0 points, right? 0. The other 6, we took 9. 6 guys scored 0 points, okay? So we actually had 1 guy score a half in a consolation wrestleback, and then 1 guy lost a team point. So we netted a negative half points out of 6 guys. You know, Ramazan got hurt and had to pull out of the tournament right away. So we had a lot of things go wrong for us on that. So, you know, we just can't depend on, if we want to do what we need to do as a team, we just can't depend on Bastida, Carr, and Coleman.
Yep.
We need 4 or 5 other guys to decide they're that guy this year. That's when you get it done. You know, when I was at Virginia Tech, we got a trophy. We had 6 guys All-American. We had 0 guys in the finals, and we got a trophy. So it's not rocket science. That's the math. You start getting 6 All-Americans, you're contending for a trophy.
What you know, leaving NCAA championships last year, like, what was that flight home like? Was it, gosh, we just feel bad for ourselves, or like, God, we're just ready to get back in the room? Because everybody reacts differently.
Probably at that point, to be quite honest, everybody's a little bit ready for a break, but they didn't take a break long. I mean, Coleman and Broderson and Schuyler and all those guys went out to Vegas, and I don't make them. There's some programs out there to make your guys. I think if you got to make a kid go to a tournament, then that's not the right message, I don't believe. So I leave it up to them. Like, we're going to support you. We're going to coach
all
you.
Summer.
In terms of competition.
Gotcha.
In the off-season competition. You know, we'll sit down and say, I think you need to go. But I think when you start forcing kids to go to things, you're doing it for them. These guys are 19, 20, 21, 22. Coleman is 23. You know, this was his own thing, you know. Then on top of it, a bunch of them went to a training camp in Colorado Springs in August. So those are things that, that's why we raise money and do what we do to give you these opportunities. But we had a lot of guys compete in, that stuff right after the season. Guys that went to the Nationals. So that plane flight back was, hey, we need to rest. But I felt like we had a lot of guys that were that close.
So this year, Tulsa back to back.
Yeah.
Does that give you guys? Is there anything in there that says, we have a leg up on just being?
We have a comfort level with Tulsa. Obviously, we know the lay of the land. I think we know, all the hotels that are right there by the venue. We're comfortable with, and that's where we're staying, I think. And so I'm a little worried that Tulsa can handle that crazy NCAA crowd, because they can handle the Big 12 crowd, but we get 5,000 or 6,000 for the finals. They're going to sell. I think that place holds 18,000. So it's a great venue for all the wrestling fans out there. The Box Center is a great venue, but they better have a big giant hot dog stand and a beer tent outside there, because I'm telling you, I didn't see that many restaurants. And
someone told me there wasn't a lot of bars out there. I'm
restaurants and bars. I said somebody that's real entrepreneurial oriented could make a lot of money if they can just rent out a half of a city block, and you could kill it.
Throw up some beer tents.
You could kill it.
So speaking of beer, I guess, and having NCAA championships. Last night was fight night, and Iowa State beat UNI this past year, and the Schwab bet, and he didn't do the Mountain Dew beer bong, I guess.
Right.
But that event this year, why do you go to that? Because there's lots of talk of Iowa's not there. Last night there was a lot of talk of it, why they weren't there or whatnot. We get a lot of questions about that, right? But I'm just, not talking about them, but why do you guys go? Why is it important for you to be there?
Well, I've always been a Joe's Nighthawk fan, and that particular part of the state is obviously for a long, long time had a great wrestling history. And so when we first got hired, I had heard about it. I didn't know much about it. And so we went. All of us went, a coaching staff. So I heard a little bit about it. Coach St. John and Coach Metcalf told me about it, because obviously I'd been at Virginia Tech for all those years. And then once I was there that first time, I'm like, wow, these people are like really invested and it means a lot to these people. I mean, all those high school coaches got up and talked before the college coaches, and you couldn't squeeze another person in this place. So I just felt like it was really, that we needed to respect that part of the state, and we needed to respect Joe and him opening his bar like that, and it was just really a good night for wrestling. I think it just kicked off wrestling season really well. I mean, it's fun. It's fun to get out and it's like I said, it's kind of good, clean fun. And the rivalry that we have with Coach Schwab and you and I is super competitive, but it's also good, clean fun.
Do you guys, you and Schwab, do you guys talk outside of
Oh yeah, we talk on the
wrestling?
phone probably at least once a month. We talk on the phone about different things. Usually it's wrestling related, but yeah, we talk about different things, and our relationship's really good, and there's a lot of respect from myself and our staff to him, to Coach Schwab and his staff. I mean, there's a lot of respect there, and I think what he does with what the resources he's got right now is second to none. I think he's they got a fan following there. I mean, that match at McLeod last year was, you couldn't have squeezed another person in that place
Mm-hmm.
either, and I think that's really good for wrestling. And so, yeah, it was fun. The whole beer bong thing. It was probably I should have coached Joe up a little bit more. I called Joe that morning and go, Joe, you got a beer bong? And he goes, yeah. So I think he went out to the Lowe's, and he got the biggest funnel with like the biggest tube. I mean, you could barely get your mouth around
I
it.
saw
So,
that
so if
thing.
Schwab would have actually probably would have died on impact when all that Mountain Dew hit his system, because it would have been like a big gulp. It would have been 12 ounces that would hit him and knocked him over. So I said, there's got to be a Wartburg student there that has a real beer bong that we can use.
Yeah, you'd
I
think so.
appreciate Joe's effort, but that thing was an industrial size freaking beer bong. Yeah.
I
Gann and Gremmel could have handled it
Gravel
early.
could have handled that.
Yeah.
That's a 3 beer bong hose there. I could tell like right away that Doug has never done a beer bong before because he didn't know what like putting the thumb in there was about. But
It was
all
so
good
big I
fun.
couldn't even get my thumb over the hole. Like I said, you're going to drown if you do this.
Yeah. I just always curious, like if the fight night was awkward for you guys, or if it is not time for you guys to be like not always competing for recruits, obviously for tickets. I mean, it's just maybe a one night where you guys can kind of just breathe a little
I don't know.
bit.
I don't like get awkward. It doesn't bother me. I mean, I don't. There's not any time I walked in there and felt like it was uncomfortable. I think we all compete and we all want to beat each other, but at the end of the day, these are your peers. This is our industry. I look at it as like other industries out there. I'm sure there's people that go to conferences all day and then at night they go out and have a beer, and there's probably people in their colleagues they like better than others. And I'm sure wrestling's the same way. There's guys that just don't like each other, but at the end of the day, we got to. Sometimes you got to take the gloves off and just be human. Too.
Yep. So I know you got to get a flight here. So really wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit more about NIL because when it came out, I mean it's no secret that you guys have been great at fundraising for the CRTC. That's important for the growth of Iowa State. And then, as individuals on the team, them being able to, benefit from their likeness has been great. We think it's great. Is it what everyone thought it was going to be? Is it a distraction? Was it a distraction maybe last year? What's your overall thought now that it's kind of came and it's here?
I think it's still a little bit to be determined. I think this next year, I think it's still so new that I'm sure, we've got kids on our team that have NIL deals, maybe close to 8 or 10 of them. But I think just the bigness of it is going to be, and I think even you're seeing it at football and basketball, even at Iowa State is, I'm close with Coach TJ in basketball, and I don't think they hardly have any guys that have NIL deals coming in the door. Now, when they get to Iowa State, I think there's guys that are getting NIL deals, but we don't have any guys that are seniors in high school that have NIL deals. I don't think. Maybe they do, but it's one of those things. It's almost kind of so personal that there's not a huge disclosure. At least I don't see yet, where compliance departments are beating down the doors to really find out what kids have out there, because it's almost just, not to sound rogue, but it's almost kind of none of their business. Is now that the rule's in place, what you decide to do. If somebody wants to come pay you for your name, image, and likeness, that's your business. You know what I'm saying? That's your business, as long as it's not anything to do with gambling or fixing results. That's kind of your business. So I still think it's a good question. I still think the jury's out a little bit. I think that, like I tell our recruits, because everybody's asking, everybody we go talk to, especially all the really good kids, mom and dad are going, well, what about NIL? I'm like, well, you know what? I can tell you this much. We've got kids out there that have some NIL deals, right? So call David Carr if you want to find out what the NIL deals are in Iowa, in the state of Iowa. Obviously we're in a state that people really like wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So I have people come to me all the time and say, hey, can I do an NIL deal with this guy, that guy? I go, yep, you can, but you got to get a hold of them directly. You've got to make that deal. So there's a group out of Des Moines that we kind of push people to if they want an NIL deal that's like a management company. So we have to stay out of it, but we can. I can go on record and say, hey, yeah, we got guys that got NIL deals. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Was that the company that you had the CRTC 2 years ago? Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think from the outside looking in, I'm just wrestling. We're like, oh, all these wrestlers are. There are some wrestlers getting some really good money. Oh, yeah. That's on record. I mean, people are on record of what they are getting, or there's some thoughts of who's getting what. I guess but that's still the same as football, right? There's still there's a bigger roster, right? But you've got 50 kids that are making really, really good money, and then this guy just isn't getting. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just a different sport. Right. I think it's the same kind of concept, but I was kind of worried about kids getting to college and be like, oh, I'm going to get $10,000 or $50,000 to wrestle. Is that reality?
No, there's not many guys I think that are bringing that worth. I mean, I'm sure the guys that are already the established guys, the national champion guys and everything, I'm sure most of those guys at every school are getting some type of an NIL deal. I mean, there's going to be, we've got programs in our sport that, the one thing I don't like about it is the have and the have-nots are going to get further and further apart, because there's some schools that can call you up and say, hey, we got a 6-figure deal for you. If you called, Joe down the street, there's going to be programs that have that kind of financial backing. And there's going to be some that'll never have that, right? So, keeping that kid that's in a mid-major program that's really good at a mid-major program might become more difficult as time goes on, because those programs that have a lot of money can throw a 6-figure deal at a kid, and the kid's like, well, wow, man, I've been busting my butt in this sport for a long time, and now I got a chance to make a couple $100,000 when I'm 22 and 23, and that's going to be attractive to some kids. So it'll be interesting to see, because I don't think the NCAA's got a really good grip on it yet. I think they're still trying to figure it out. I saw just not long ago some legislation came out where they're trying to rein it back in a little bit after they just opened the floodgates, and it was floodgates. I mean, it was like they couldn't say crap about anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't. You could send them the most bizarre case in the world. Well, what if this happens? And the NCAA would say it's permissible. They're like, really? Really? That's permissible? Like, this kid can get this kind of money for that?
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, because the amount of work that these kids have to do to get these big numbers is they can't put a cap on it. So if you own a car dealership in Des Moines and you want John Smith the wrestler, to come, and you want to pay him $50,000 an hour to come to your car dealership, you can pay him $50,000. There's no cap.
There's no cap.
Yep.
There's nothing. There's no kind of
whatever somebody's willing to pay that dude to come in. That's the way that was explained to me.
Yep.
And I asked that specific question.
Well, that makes sense, because then where do you ever draw the line of like, well, this kid's not worth that? Well, it's just
somebody wants to pay. I got him a walk-on. If there's some dude out there that wants to pay one of my walk-ons $50,000 to come to his kid's bar mitzvah, he can pay it.
I saw that there's like, I don't know if they're calling them collectives. Yeah. Is that where you think it will more go to, where there's like this?
That's where it's going to in football and basketball. So these collectives all have a cause. It might be like a United Way type thing. So whoever they solicit as an athlete, there's work to be done. All these situations, there has to be money exchange. I mean, there has to be work done. So going to a car dealership and paying a kid for an hour for $50,000, that seems crazy to me, but it seems permissible. But more in line, what you're seeing is kids are doing, they're going out, and the collectives are paying them to go out and represent a nonprofit organization, to go to a United Way fund, to go to a kids' cancer thing or something that's benefiting. So you as a donor can make a donation to that collective and that cause. It might be a cancer cause, it might be a whatever, and then that collective can pay that kid for getting out and helping and supporting.
Gotcha.
So that's what seems to be a little bit more common in football and basketball.
Yeah, and you talked about like haves and have nots. There was a lot of discussion about RTC, and then people not thinking the RTC is really fair for some of these have nots, right? And now does that make that even more powerful, right? The NILs, like if RTCs go away, now you just switch. Okay, well we're gonna fund through NIL, right? Like there's just it's a different way of funding, I guess. But what is the talk as far as the field goes, as far as RTCs? Like, are people trying to tighten those up a little bit, or is
I don't think the NCAA. The one thing that was frustrating with me early, and I finally gave up on it, was is I don't think the NCAA is trying to put any bumpers on RTCs at all. And I never have seen them to do that. I mean, I don't even know if the NCAA manual has the word RTC in it in regards to wrestling. They've always just kind of turned a blind eye to really kind of what's going on with the RTC. Now USA Wrestling has a one-page document of rules that RTCs have to follow in terms of how far away kids can come in and stuff like that. But as far as some schools interpret a summer camp as an outside entity, so that summer camp could actually I could pay David Carr $5,000 if he wanted to promote the Kevin Dresser wrestling camps. Some schools interpret that's permissible. Iowa State doesn't. Everybody's different. Some schools permit you to use your RTCs to help with 501 or to help with NILs. Some schools might not. The moral of the story, what I'm trying to say, is there just doesn't seem to be a lot of clarity right now. And so I think from what I'm seeing is I knew that the NCAA was going to have to come in at some point and tighten it up. And that's what our compliance people at Iowa State say, that at some point they're going to have to come in and tighten it up, because it's just so broad right now. Because when the NCAA lost that case, and that was a monumental. They went a monumental shift. They went from managing every little detail to now like carte blanche.
Crazy.
Anything goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, there's that aspect of the sport is NIL, RTC. It's a very real thing outside of maybe what some of the fans see, right? It's an important part of your job and making sure that is part of your program and getting to where you're going to be at. So I know you got to get going, so we'll wrap up the show. But best of luck, this weekend, get it started. I feel like every year I'd say, doing a good job, getting people in the stands, and now it's time. Like, hey, let's start winning, right? Let's get back to winning, and having AAs on Saturday night, in Tulsa. So
we need to do both. Last year we finished 15-1 in duels. We won some big dual meets, and didn't have the postseason we wanted. So we need to pull them both off this year.
All right, so that's Cyclones tickets are still on sale. They did just post out again. They're still doing this where if you're a youth club, high school club, you get free tickets. Right, that's always been kind of a deal at Iowa State. I remember going as a little kid. So take advantage of that. Right, if you got a kids club out there that's big, or you're struggling to get your kids club kind of going, like, hey, here's free tickets to a big deal.
So if I'm looking at the high school coaches, giving them my best sales pitch, middle school, high school programs, clubs, this is a great motivator for kids to getting them to a college meet. I can tell you, my middle school coach brought me to Hilton Coliseum when I was 10 years old, and it was a big deal for me. It changed my perspective on wrestling. It changed my perspective on training. I was a super motivated little dude when I got back to Humboldt after that first trip to a college wrestling match. So I know when I was a high school coach for all those years in Virginia, I took my guys to a college wrestling match every year, one field trip. And it was just, you could see the excitement of my team when we got back the next day, because they got to go down there, and we took them down the floor and we showed them different places. And that was in Virginia, where the crowds were a fraction of what they are in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, it's a good chance for them to get out. You can hook up your whole team for this first one for everybody. You can bring your whole team in, your booster club, everything, and they can come to this match for free.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy just to think about that one experience that you had, right?
Huge.
We were just talking to Grant Henderson last week just about things that have shaped his life in the sport of wrestling. One thing that one coach said, and this is one thing that maybe it was for you that could do something for a kid out there right now. And I'm hearing in our communities that our clubs are doing well. We have super clubs in Iowa, and kids don't know whether they should go to the small club, the big club, and whatnot. But you guys you're doing what you can to get those clubs into to Hilton, and so make sure you take advantage of that. You never know whose life it's going to change, right? So super excited you guys are just continuing to do that. Ticket sales are still going on, but again, we'll have some Iowa State guys on Rockfin next weekend at the Grandview Open for as far as IAwrestle goes, and then the Grandview Iowa State duel coming up in Humboldt. So pretty pumped about that. But anything else, Coach? Okay. All right. So Cyclones are in action this weekend. You can check out that on Rockfin as well. If you miss any part of the show, it's on Rockfin, it's on Facebook, and it's on YouTube now. So if you miss any of it, it's free for you to come back and take a look at it. If you have any questions for Coach Dress or anything like that, shoot us a message and I'll pass it along. Thanks again for watching another episode of Potentially Dangerous.